r/NoSleep. Posted by you/BadandyTheRed. I still hear the footsteps in the rain. Every night since it happened I have the same nightmare. I know it's not over, I know there's only one way it can end. As soon as I close my eyes and lay down I am there again. The sound is behind me again, the methodical, rhythmic splashing sound of the thing that is hunting me, the sound that I know heralds the end. I was a fool to get caught out in this, and now I know I will likely meet my fate, just as all my friends did before. Why did I try to make a run for it? Why did I assume I would make it out? No one is getting out of here alive. I dash ahead, my limbs burning, my heart racing. I fall face first into the water, then I wake up. No one believed my story, and why would they? Officially everything was just a terrible accident, a vacation, a large body of water, people drown, not often almost an entire group of friends, but people drown, and that's what I was told as my claims were ignored. Always the fake concerned looks as I gave my account, eventually those gave way to annoyance at my pressing of the subject. My friends' families even seem determined to chalk it up to an accident and insist that I am dishonoring their memories by trying to make such outrageous claims about what happened, but I know, I was there and I know what I saw with my own eyes, and I know it was real. I know it was real because since it happened I have scarcely left my house, and that is after moving to Nevada, the driest state I could think of. I decided to write this all down in the likely event that something happens to me. I know no one will believe this account either and assume that I am crazy, so I may as well share it with a broader audience, and maybe you will believe me, maybe believe why the falling rain itself is a herald of my impending death and why I will never be caught out in the rain as long as I live, as short as that might be. We should have listened to that fucking sign. My name is Tim. My friends and I had gone on a summer break vacation to a fancy spa and resort by a lake, far out in the country. Good times, relaxation, a drink or two, a massage or three, and maybe a chance to hook up with Becky if I played my cards right. We had just rounded the corner to a scenic vista that must be the road leading to the resort. The area was impressive, with beautiful forests, cool clean air, and a crystal blue lake, a small slice of summer heaven. We saw what must be the resort poking out through the tree line. Seeing we were close, my friend Adam gunned the engine of his old van and shouted, "Hang on, it's going to be a bumpy ride." And then, as if aiming for them intentionally, he hit a series of rough potholes on the road. We were all jostled around badly as we barely had enough space for all of us to fit in the first place, and Gina punched Adam in the arm and chided him for driving so recklessly. Alright, here we are, I thought to myself excitedly. I was genuinely looking forward to this, we were going to have a blast. We all practically fell out of the van. We started unpacking what little amenities we had brought with us. Besides myself, there was Adam, our friendly but rather egotistical resident jock, and my best friend. There was Adam's girlfriend Gina, a very no-nonsense and intense type who would probably be the CEO of her own company after finishing school. Becky, who was Adam's sister, was beautiful, kind, and a little shy, but sometimes surprised us with how outgoing she could be. And finally, our resident know-it-all Laura, the smartest person we all knew and the only one whose ego was bigger than Adam's. We had originally planned to go to a concert this summer since we didn't think we could afford something as lavish as a resort stay, but some person in Adam's family knew the owners and got us a stay for much cheaper than we could afford otherwise. I was taken aback by the sights around the resort. Despite being almost airier with how out of the way it was, the natural beauty made me forget all about how far away we were and how long it would take to get help if we needed it. We walked up to the main building and went inside. Odd, there was no staff there at the counter where one would normally check in. Before anyone else could ask a question, Adam rushed forward and started smashing the bell on the counter and shouting, "Ring-a-ling-ding, I say, room service." Like an asshole. Gina sighed, Becky and Laura giggled, and I rolled my eyes while laughing a little as well. A large man in a too tight-fitting and not particularly seasonal turtleneck came out from a back room and went behind the desk. "Good afternoon, you must all be the..." He paused, looking down at a paper. "The Johnston party, yes?" "That would be me and my associates, good chap," Adam said in a bad English accent, and we all had to suppress another groan. Very good," said the concierge. "My name is Mr. Dalton. I will be attending your stay, along with Miss Llewellyn, who will be on call for all staff needs. I am afraid you caught us during our off time. You see, the resort here is nearly shut down during hurricane season, so some amenities may not be available." I scratched my head in confusion. Wait, did he say hurricane season? But that's a lake, not the ocean. We are miles from it. What difference should hurricanes or possibly the odd thunderstorm cause for a forest resort? For safety purposes, we must also ask that you all sign these liability waivers before I give you your room keys. Due to the season, we will make every effort to, though cannot guarantee your safety, especially if you are caught out in a storm while partaking of some of our activities here. Laura perked up at that. Liability waivers in case of accidental injuries or death, this says. What kind of place is this? We should go, guys, this seems very sketchy. Adam, the normal voice of reason, assuming reason had about one too many, was already signing his form. He bellowed, come on guys, it's not so bad, probably just some weird insurance thing they have everyone do, let's get it over with, and go, I wanna go swimming. Not wanting to be left out, we all agreed and reluctantly signed the waivers. Mr. Dalton smiled, handed us an antique-looking brass key, and lead us to our room. It was a luxury suite that was very impressive, with several rooms, fine decor, 2 hot tubs and an impressive view looking out over both the forest and the nearby Lake Casher. Everyone was stunned by how nice this place was, especially with how cheap we were able to get it, though we did notice it may have been so cheap because it seemed like we might be the only guests here during the season. Are people really that scared of storms this far away from the coast? I thought. I was bumped from my reverie by Becky, who accidentally dropped her bag right by me coming into the room. I bent down at the same time to help her pick it up and we almost bumped our heads together. We each suppressed a little chuckle and she smiled beautifully at me. It made me forget the quip I had come up with to try and poke fun at the situation, and I ended up staring dumbly until Adam grabbed my shoulder and said, watch where you are going, dude, that big head of yours if a lethal weapon. The girls chuckled and I got a little red in the face and went on to my room. Inside the room was immaculate besides being a little dusty, and there was faint musty smell, possibly due to disuse. I started putting away what little I brought with me. I hopped on the bed and stretched out. As I lay on the bed I leaned up and looked around the room. I spotted an odd scratch mark on the wall by the closet. I got up and looked closer at it. It was painted over but not restored, so the grooves of the cut were still visible. What did that? I wondered. I opened the closet and found nothing other than a hanging robe, a box fan, an ironing board, and a small box tucked under the board. What was this? I puzzled. I opened the box and saw a handful of old photos, like old Polaroid style. It appeared to be footprints on the shore near the lake. The prints were strangely shaped and there were more pictures of the prints in the forest dirt, a faint watery outline on what looked like a driveway, and even on a carpeted ground which looked disturbingly like the same carpet the resort used in certain places. This was bizarre. Did someone have a foot fetish? I laughed to myself, before becoming slightly concerned when I saw panicked handwriting on the back of the last one that appeared to be of the ground soaking wet with still falling raindrops captured in the picture. The photo was blurry but looked like it may be of an outline of a person. The panicked writing read, "The rain." It was the rain. That sound, it was them. What the hell were these? I thought. Maybe someone was peeping on people and got busted, or maybe someone was stalking the last person here? I thought of a few possibilities before I heard Adam shouting that dinner was ready. The staff, it seemed, despite the low number, had a solid cook, and we had a large dinner brought up to our room, which to our shock was complimentary. We all had a good time, and Gina, despite normally being the straight-edge type, had actually brought a rather large assortment of liquor, so it was not long before we were all shit-faced and partying like a proper summer vacation. It was starting to get late and I was about to pass out when Adam and Gina both demanded that we all go swimming out at the lake since it was so nice and warm outside. We all agreed and changed into our swimsuits. As we walked down to the lake, we noted a rather prominent sign by the lake with a very large font indicating a strange rule. It said absolutely no swimming in the rain. What a weird rule, I thought. Laura gawked at the sign as well and said, well, I have heard of not eating before swimming, but the rain has little influence on swimming safety in a closed lake with no boats about. And besides, Adam said boisterously, licking his finger and holding up to the air, there ain't any rain due in these parts for days. He snickered to himself over the sound of everyone's eyes rolling. Since the climate seemed okay, we splashed into the water and were soon swimming, singing and having a good time. That was what I wished our whole vacation was like. I never thought such a catastrophe could happen at that point with how happy we all were. But it would start soon after. I hopped out of the water. Everyone was having a great time and thought it would be cool if we built a big bonfire by the shore and went to work trying to get the materials to make it. But my plan seemed thwarted as a large thunderclap peeled in the sky and rain began to fall down onto the lake and the shore, the pattering raindrops ensuring that my hope of starting a fire was moot. Dang, I thought that would have been cool. Uh-oh, we are gonna be in trouble. Hope they don't throw us out, ha ha ha, Gina said this time, rather drunk and uncharacteristically unserious. Yeah, but our towels are getting wet, I thought, and for some reason also thought of that strange picture from the room that mentioned rain. Becky got out of the water first, grabbed her towel and came up near me under a close-by tree where I had attempted to make the fire. Some time for a storm, eh? I said rather lamely. Yeah, sure is, she said, trying to humor my attempts at banter. What broke the awkward pause was a strong, almost searchlight-style light looking toward the water. It shined on us briefly, and as we squinted at it we heard two sharp honks from a whistle which almost sounded like an old steam engine. Before we knew what had happened, there was a commotion at the resort, and Mr. Dalton and the enigmatic Miss Llewellyn had jumped into a large red truck with warning lights on the top and thundered out of the lot. They were driving so fast I thought they might be coming for us since we had broken the rule. Just as it seemed like they were going to run us down, they veered off and started down the road, pausing only briefly to have Mr. Dalton roll down his window and say, "Bad luck, my friends. It was nice to have known you, Godspeed, and indeed God knows you will need it for what comes next." He continued saying, "We left the resort unlocked, but I don't believe it will be of much help. You must accept our deepest apologies. There is little we can do to help now. If you can escape, if you cannot, die well, we will notify your next of kin. Farewell." And he rolled up the window and sped off. What the hell does that mean? What was going on? I was panicked now, and so was Becky, who was looking back and forth, and the rain intensified. They just left us? What is going on? She cried. I tried to calm her down, but I didn't know what that was all about either. Maybe it was some weird prank. What did we miss? Adam said, finally getting out of the water and lumbering towards us, still partly drunk. The staff just left. I said. They just up and left. They are gone. They said they left the resort open but that they couldn't stay there. I don't know what kind of prank this is, but it's not funny. This stunt, the rain, the pictures. I was ranting, thinking maybe Adam set up this sort of thing as a big joke, but I saw the confusion on his and everyone else's faces and was afraid that this might indeed really be happening. What did they actually say? Laura asked as she approached as well. I explained what Becky and I saw, and then we looked at each other as if reading the other's mind and asked in unison, "Where is Gina?" "Hey Gina, babe, time to get out of the water," Adam shouted, a thunderclap almost cutting him off seconds after he shouted. "Alright, a few buzzkills have to ruin it, I guess," she slurred as she slowly walked out of the water, a buzzed grin still on her face. As she walked up and out of the water by a boat launch, we heard an odd sound like the splashing footsteps she was making coming out of the water seemed to double somehow. It sounded like two people were walking out of the water, the other tread being much heavier and steadier. She must have heard it too, like us, because she paused briefly, almost as if to test the sound and see if it continued. After a brief delay it did. Splash, 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 stomp, 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 then it stopped. Gina turned around and said, "Thought I was going and she was wrenched off her feet to the ground, a sickening crunch being heard as he head smashed down onto the concrete. We saw her flailing and ran to help, but to our horror, she began getting pulled into the water by some unseen force, and her eyes and mouth began to leak water when she tried to scream. Adam and I grabbed her arms and tried to pull her back out, but we were kicked off our feet as well and heard even more watery footsteps and a disturbing gurgling sound. Adam was shouting and thrashing, trying to pull Gina out of the water with all his might. He cried out to her to breathe as it looked like he was getting some response from her. Her mouth opened again and water gushed out and enveloped his head as well. There was a splashing and sprinting sound of footsteps, and Adam was knocked back with such violent force he was launched into the lake, and rather than sinking, he just floated on the surface, convulsing and apparently drowning despite not being under the water. This spectacle was enough. Becky and Laura shrieked louder than I had ever heard anyone scream in my life and ran towards the resort, and I shook myself from my own terror-induced stupor and did the same. We made it inside, panicked and panting, shivering with cold terror our breath. I closed the door to the entryway, found a large lock and slid it into place. We huddled around not knowing what to say. Becky was crying, but Laura broke the silence. "What the fuck just happened there? That can't be real. They just drowned, above the water. Those footsteps, what is going on?" I didn't know what to say. I just said, "We need to find a phone, we need to call for help. Maybe there's a landline here that actually has reception," since we knew the phones back in the room had not had service for miles before we got here. The rain was getting heavier. It was a downpour outside. As we searched around the entrance and the reception office, we found a phone, but our hope was short-lived. We picked it up and the line was dead. There was nothing for emergency service, no radio or anything else. We were stuck here alone. As my panicked and grief-stricken mind came to grips with this revelation, we heard and saw something unbelievable outside. Over the sound of the intense rain, we heard the heavy, methodical approach of splashing footsteps. They stomped across the parking lot, splashing gouts of water where they landed, but no thing was making them that we could see. We held our collective breaths as the stomping, splashing footfalls approached the front door and stopped. There was a terrible silence, and for a moment we thought nothing might happen. Then we heard what sounded like scratching on the glass, and then a terribly cutting sound as words began to appear being cut into the glass. We started to shake as we read the words, "Help us, we are drowning. Help us, we are your friends, you can't leave us." Becky let out a sob. "No Adam, no. Is he still alive? We need to help him, my brother, he is dying." We stopped her from moving towards the glass, and as we stood there petrified by the invisible rider, we heard a knock and scratching at the back door, and then hideous gurgling sounds like one's head being forced underwater sounded from above as well. My heart felt like it stopped when we heard footsteps sweatily clomping on the ground above us. Laura ran sprinting away toward the room. I couldn't breathe. I sat there dumbfounded. Becky grabbed my arm and was screaming at me, "They have Adam!" I couldn't respond, so she ran toward the window where she said she saw him. She said he was on the ground and he was drowning. She unlocked the door and the sound of the bolt shooting back knocked me back into my conscious self. I barely had time to loose a strangled scream of "Becky, no!" Then a cascade of water and the thunderous marching of wet footsteps rushed forward and bowled her out of the door and into the drenched ground beyond. I saw her terrified look and she looked back at me, and her scream was cut off by some unseen hand smothering her with that impossible water. I ran as fast as I could. I tried to get to the room where Laura was, but as I reached the door and frantically tried it, I realized I didn't have the key. I screamed for Laura to let me in, but I heard nothing on the other side of the door, only footsteps behind me, slow wet padding footsteps over the carpeted floor of the resort. I screamed as I lowered my shoulder and barged into the door once, twice, 3, then 4 times until finally it broke on a hinge and fell forward. The padding footstep was behind me, and when I fell into the room I saw Laura with her hands over her ears huddled on the couch, almost catatonic. "Come on," I shouted, "we have to go now." I beseeched her, but she was utterly unresponsive. The footsteps were in the room now, slowly moving toward the middle of the room. My heart sank, but I fled and left the footsteps to catch up to and engulf her. I'm only thankful I didn't have to hear the scream. I slammed my door shut, grabbed my bag with my phone, personal effects and everything else, and closed myself in the closet of my room. I heard the footsteps, then the knocking, then the scratching, then the voices. "Help us, we are stuck under the water, only you can save us, save us. Help us, it hurts, the water, there's too much, we are drowning." I held my hands over my ears as well and closed my eyes and hoped and prayed for an end to this, that maybe this was all just a terrible dream. After what felt like ages the sound stopped, the voices, the footsteps, the scratching, it was all quiet now. I noticed the rain had stopped as well. The rain, maybe it was somehow connected to it, the goddamn rain. We were swimming in the lake and it started to rain. Did those bastards know this could happen? Was that what the waivers were for? My hands curled into fists. I couldn't believe it. I redoubled my will and fought on, determined to at least make them pay for knowingly risking my friends' lives and getting almost all of us killed. If it stopped raining I could get away. I needed to get out of here. I cautiously opened the door and looked outside. Nothing grabbed me and no watery footsteps were moving anywhere. It was dead silent. I walked out slowly through the hall to the living room, fearing what I might see, but Laura was gone. I felt ashamed and guilty that I had not tried to grab her and run to the safety of a room. I slowly walked out of the room and downstairs. The wind was still kicked up and the front doors were hanging open, creaking in the blowing wind. It was almost morning. A faint light crept into the entryway. I had gotten Adams's keys from his room and should be able to get away using the van. My eyes darted frantically and I looked around, peeking outside to see ominous clouds, but thankfully no rain at the moment. I slowly walked to the parking lot, my heart racing at the sounds of my own footsteps, making sure I didn't hear another behind or in front of me. I got to the van and thought I might actually make it. Yet as I pressed the unlock button on the fob, a thunderclap resounded from over the hills and in moments a morning shower had begun, rain pattering off of me and the van. I froze at first and then exploded into motion, reaching for the door to open it when I saw inside and fell backwards in indescribable horror. Adam and Gino, or at least their boneless-looking bodies, slowly writhed up into the front seats of the van, almost as if being moved into position like some demonic marionette puppets. I stood there, mouth agape in horror, as Adams's face slunk toward me and his mouth opened. Water gushed out and began filling the cabin and spilling out, and the corpse things that used to be my friends moved to open the doors and the wall of water rushed out to meet me. They remained collapsing onto the dashboard, but the splashing footsteps began immediately coming towards me again. I screamed like a madman and broke for the woods, the implacable footsteps never receding too far behind no matter how fast I ran. It felt hopeless, my energy was all but spent, and I ran past my limits in a pure desperate bid to survive. My whole body was aching and I could barely breathe, but I kept running. I knew if I stopped I would die. I thought I could see what might be a main road. Maybe the thing might not be able to follow me past a certain point, but just as I approached the road I tripped over my own tired feet and some vines and fell into a ditch by the road that was filled with water from the flash flood. I rolled over, spitting water out and screaming and panting and defiantly challenging my fate. I stood in the water that was up to my waist. I looked back the way I came. I heard nothing. I let out a sigh of relief, and I thought, could this really be over? There was a painstaking silence. I exhaled and turned around to try and climb out of the ditch. Then I heard it, just like I have been hearing it in my nightmares ever since the footsteps in the rain. To this day I don't know how or why I got away when my friends died. I don't know why I am sharing this, maybe survivor's guilt. Either way, I don't think I will be around much longer. There's no way I can avoid the rain forever. It's still out there somehow. It can follow me wherever I go, and as soon as the rain starts falling, those footsteps start falling as well. I moved to the driest state in the country, but it won't be enough. Even when it's not raining I hear it in my nightmares. I think of my friends being drowned before my eyes. I still hear their screams. It still feels so real, just like that faint sound I hear. No, it couldn't be. I checked the forecast this morning, yet as I write this, it sounds like thunder in the distance and perhaps a light pattering of rain. Please excuse me, I had better lock the doors. I hear the footsteps now and know I will be having visitors soon.